Hi guys, I'm Austin, and today I am going to be removing the front lens cover from the lights on my 2011 BMW 335. So for those of you who don't know, this would be considered LCI, life cycle improvements, or facelift models. And this is going to be on a sedan with the bi-xenon. So this only applies like the 335 and the M3 sedan, that is. So as you can see, I've already done one of these. I removed this one successfully without any damage to the actual lens housing. And you can see the old lens here having been pried off. This took me roughly about an hour and a half to do between prying, heating, cutting, etc. But I'm happy with the end result. So I'm gonna show you guys how to do it on the second one that I have. So you're gonna need a couple of tools for these, and most importantly, you're gonna need a dremel. It does not need to be Dremel brand or a really fancy brand. I have Hyper Tough, which is literally the cheapest one you can find from Walmart. I think it was $16. I have some diamond tipped bits right here, cutting bits. You're gonna need those. Makes it a lot easier for you. Got them on Amazon for pretty cheap with a bunch of other bits. A heat gun is definitely helpful. I would argue this is not 100% necessary for this. However, it may make your life easier. An exacto knife was helpful for me. It's good for precise cuts, but again, the next tool I think is more useful than either of these two. The most useful tool here, other than the Dremel, would be a soldering iron with a cutting tip on it. This essentially is going to become a hot knife, which I guess you could do with both of these too. This thing is really efficient. You just want to be careful with it because it definitely can damage the housing if you leave it on too long or if it burns too hot. So be cautious with this. Lastly, super essential is a screwdriver. You're gonna need a nice flat blade. You're gonna be doing a lot of prying. And then for PPE, as you can see, this thing is covered in dust. So you're definitely gonna want some gloves and you're gonna want some safety goggles. So when you cut it, basically what you're gonna be cutting off is the top bit of plastic. There's two pieces of plastic, one on the bottom, one on the top, and the butyl tape or Permaseal sits in between those. You can kind of see it right there. See it? It's a rubbery material, not super hard. So the pieces you're gonna be cutting off are gonna be about this size. You wanna be especially careful with the corner. It's very possible to damage it if you're not careful. So make sure that you have a steady hand and you cut in relatively straight lines, kind of like I have. It might look jagged, but they're still straight lines. Reposition as necessary so that you can comfortably do it. When cutting, you want to be especially careful not to damage the back here at all, or to crack anything either, or to cut through anything. Because remember, this needs to be water sealed at the end, so that way moisture doesn't get in here and fog up your lens and potentially mess with the electronics and all the hard work that you're going to do to retrofit these, if that's the direction that you're going in. So as you can see, mine are still in pretty good condition. They're a little chewed up in certain parts, but there's no holes in them. Right here, probably going to heat this up and bend this back a little bit. That's the main prying point. Yeah, you just want to keep it in relatively good condition. Then you're going to want to clean this up at the end to make it easier for the tape to adhere to these and just look cleaner overall. Also worth noting, I would not do this somewhere that's going to be difficult to clean or where these little plastic flaky bits can get into crevices. My floor was covered before I vacuumed this area, and as you can see, there's a lot of soot on the Dremel too, so it's going to cover your hands. If you're wearing something nice, it's going to get all over you, and it's just going to make a mess everywhere. So just make sure you're in an area that you can clean up relatively well. Now, I don't particularly think I need to time-lapse me cutting this for you. It's probably going to take about, I'd say, 20 minutes to cut through all of this really neatly, and I'll get right back to you in a moment and show you some of the prying and soldering process. Now again, as I said in the beginning, there are two layers and the glue basically is in between both of them. So this black plastic bit is all you're going to be cutting. You're going to want to get close to the edge, but not quite cut on the edge. Because at that point you're going to be going into the backside of it, which you don't want because that's going to make it trickier to get a watertight seal on this afterwards. So make sure you cut shallow. Just try to cut through the one layer. If you scar the layer underneath, it's okay. But just try to cut this top layer only. And then afterwards, you're gonna use your pry blade or your screwdriver to basically peel all of this stuff up. I would recommend cutting it when you get near corners. That way you don't accidentally cut in bad areas after that. But try to get long strips if possible. It's just gonna make it cleaner and easier for you to manage. All right, guys, so it took me about 10 minutes, but I cut the lip of all of this, and now it's time to pry it up. So you want to be careful while you're doing this, but it should come undone pretty easily. It's okay if you break this top bit a little bit. Just be careful, as I said. Trickiest part is getting underneath it to begin with. Once you get underneath it, though, it's pretty easy. All right, so we've broken one piece right here. That's okay. It'll help us get in. So, there we go. This is a thick glue underneath here. And this is the part where you're gonna want to start using this to dig into the channel underneath and get the glue out. So as you can see, if you just kind of shove it along, it kind of just comes out of place on its own. It's pretty handy. Now do be careful with this because these things are not cheap. Xenon lights, as you know, are probably like $2,000 new for both of them. And even from a junkyard or eBay, you're still probably looking at like $600 to $700 for a whole set. There are retrofitters that you can pay online, pay about like $1,000 or $2,000 to do this. Various customization options. But we don't have that kind of money, so we're doing it ourselves with like $200 worth of eBay parts and a dream. I'm just gonna time lapse the rest of this. All right, guys, so yeah, that came off in just a couple of pieces, pretty solid. Now for the really tricky part, which is actually getting these apart. This is exposed now, but you can't just pull these apart. I mean, maybe if you're really lucky and the glue wasn't set properly, but you'd probably be dealing with moisture issues at that point. So you're going to want to scrape as much of this crap out of here as you can. The heat gun will help with this, so if you heat it up in advance, definitely gonna help you get it off. And then you're gonna wanna use the soldering iron in the end to get any of the bits that you really can't get. So again, I'm gonna time lapse this just because this is going to probably take about an hour all in all to get off. The easy part's done, as long as you're good with the dremel, that is. Now it's time for the technical part, and you really wanna be careful not to damage this lip. You have to be cautious with it, because if you damage it, it's gonna cost you. So be careful with it. Do not pry too hard against the side of this. When you're trying to make space with it. And once you start to get gaps in this after we've used the soldering iron, you're really gonna want to try to use your hands to try to pull this thing off, because that's gonna be the most efficient method. Let's get to it. What you really want to do here is you want to scrape some of the glue off that we just heated up a little bit. That won't melt the glue. You'd really have to keep it on there for a while, I think, to melt it, if it's even possible. I don't know what temp this glue is good till. It's kind of like RTV, honestly. But you're going to do this to expose the little gap underneath here, and doing that is going to make it a lot easier to cut through the side of and to get this stupid thing off. Thank you, BMW, for over-engineering such a simple part of the vehicle. You can also use an exacto knife to cut in this little channel down here. This again will help expose the gap in between these, because there is a gap, you just probably haven't found it yet. Once we start to pry, it will become very evident. I would honestly argue that using the exact knife before using the screwdriver is a better tactic. Last time I started with the screwdriver, but honestly, I think that using the exacto knife first saves you time, because it cuts the seam in between the glue and the screwdriver. You're gonna force through that little seam, and that in turn is going to start to split things. As you can see, this is already starting to come apart. So this is actually easier than last time. Last time I was not able to get it start coming apart until I started using the soldering iron and more heat. Now, around the corner, there's a little bit less lippage to work with. You're gonna have a little bit tougher time finding that channel. This is one of the points where you wanna be really, really careful. All right, so we're gonna use the soldering iron blade for this part right here. It's really caught up right here and nothing else is really getting through easily. So this will just save us a lot of time, honestly. So you wanna be careful with the soldering iron blade. You don't want to accidentally cut through, the back of this plastic here. So we're gonna heat it up. I had it at about 325 degrees Celsius. That seemed to work pretty well for me. It was a decent balance of, hey, this is hot enough to cut through the plastic, and this is not so hot that it's catching things on fire and destroying everything. So definitely finding that balance is good. These things usually heat up pretty quickly. So again, with the soldering iron blade, it probably isn't fully heated right now, but I'm gonna start working on it anyways. Just run it along this channel down here and try to cut out the glue. The heated tip will have a much easier time doing this than anything else you shove in here. Anything. As you can see, I mean, this thing is not very sharp. This is not like a razor blade tip, yet it is digging through this thing like crazy. So use it to your advantage, and I would suggest prying it while it's still relatively warm. The glue may be more pliable at this point. The plastic may be too, though, so be careful. Alright, I'm gonna start to try to pry this part in general now. By trying to get the screwdriver underneath here. I think this is going to help this process just go along faster in general. Last time I was able to get it right underneath here, so we're gonna see if we can do that this time too. And you just widen it up to the point where you can slip it underneath one of these cracks. Be careful so you don't accidentally break anything else in the process. As you can see, we just cracked it open a little bit. So it's coming along now. Be careful. Obviously, if you're not planning on replacing certain things, then be careful with them. I'm planning on replacing this, so I'm not being careful with this. I'm scratching the inside of it right now. Be careful of your halos, all of that too. If you don't plan on replacing them, I am, so I'm not entirely concerned, nor am I concerned about the chrome, because I'm planning on blacking that out. Oh, looks like there was a little bit of glue in the back here. All right, guys, and now it should be pretty much ready to come out. Be really careful with this again. Pry gently, especially in this corner. Should be the last place that it comes off of. Oops.
be really, really careful with the chrome if you're not planning on deleting the chrome like I am. All right, see? There we go. Just really, really careful. And there we go. All right, guys, that is how you remove your lens. As you can see, it's not a job for the faint of heart. It takes a lot of patience and being careful. But in the end, I mean, what we have here is the thing off. As you can see, I need to fix this. This would be my directional light. It's gotten out of skew, and that won't just fix itself. It's done like that. When there's this big of a gap, it's just not going to be able to go back in. Yeah, I mean, looking around the edge, there's no significant damage done to it. There's some parts that are a little bit choppy, but overall, it's looking pretty good, and it should be ready to receive a new lens by the time I'm done with it. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. Best of luck with your DTM retrofit, your fixing of this thing, blackout, whatever project it may be. Best of luck with it, and please like and comment and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and want to see more E90 LCI 335 content. Thank you, and have a good one.